Hey there, this is Josh Palmieri, and what I'd like to do is I'd like to walk you through some of the front end improvements that I've developed and designed a lot of for our OU campus sites. Our OU campus sites are sites that have been built and managed within OmniUpdate CMS that we use at Stony Brook University in the communications department to manage upwards of 200 plus CMS sites from different departments and different clients across campus. So what we're looking at now is a little documentation site, and not a little, a big documentation, front-end documentation for users to reference the available functionality that they can quickly drop these things called snippets in. So we've identified a lot of the common uses of different ways to show types of content, and we've called them snippets. OmniUpdate has an insert function where you can insert a predefined snippet of code, essentially, that then gives you or gives the user a nice editable form to be able to enter their content and easily put that in instead of having to worry about styling things themselves or recreating the wheel. These are kind of those common use cases for pieces of content. So I'm sure by now you've browsed across the screen, you've seen some of these snippets that are here, so I'm just going to pop in and show you some of them. So this first tab here, this is a simple demo to show us some buttons. But the most interesting one here is the third one here. This, when the user clicks on it, will pop up and will show a YouTube video as such. The user just simply defines what YouTube video they want to display. Things are about to change. And that video pops up when you click that lightbox button and plays automatically. So when the user enters that in the CMS, they're given a little form. They just enter the YouTube video, put some options as well. They can define a custom starting point, but those are some of the back-end stuff. We're here to talk about front-end. All these things are optimized for responsive design. What that means is any screen size from small to big. These things are going to be looking really, really sweet. Okay, Google Calendar. This is not a great example in the sense that it's not super fancy. Excuse me there. It's not super fancy. Basically, these are just straight Google embeds from Google Calendar. Google does not give an API, to my knowledge, and after all my research, I did not find any sort of API to be able to tap into Google's data and actually pull that out and style it. Unfortunately, because the big goal of all these is to kind of pull in branding. So from a front-end perspective, not the best example, but here's the thing. Instead of, kind of just letting people find that Google embed, do it themselves, have it not work great for responsive, and all those things, what I've done is I've pulled that in, I've reined that in, and I've made sure, that content container is going to be a max width of 100%, and that the content's going to scale down well for mobile. Again, some of these items, they're not the most ideal, right? I mean, a 7-column grid is essentially what this is, this calendar on a mobile view. You're not really viewing much, a lot of your content's cut off. But again, we're finding the best case scenario based on users needing to tap into their calendar data in Google. We can't kind of force them to come out of that into the new calendar, which we do have a custom calendar, which I'm going to show you next. And so just a quick note of background, we are Stony Brook Communications. I work in Stony Brook Communications. We are the umbrella for the university. We give out best practices. We can tell people, hey, we recommend you use this calendar instead. But from a process standpoint, that ultimate decision has got to come from the department. So here's an example. I'm able to use some XML output from this calendar system. And I'm parsing that data with PHP and essentially creating these list outputs that link off to our calendar.stonybrook.edu subdomain with all of that event information. I've also done all of the front end on that site as well, calendar.stonybrook.edu. So feel free to go check that out as well for some of the front end visual. That system had to be branded based on what was existing there. So if you do dive into some of the CSS, as a little disclaimer, I wasn't able to change any DOM code, and I actually had to use some jQuery functions on load to inject our header and our footer and do some intelligent front-end manipulation with JavaScript with jQuery. Not the most ideal, in my opinion, and for best practice for performance. Again, I'm talking about calendar.stonybrook.edu right now. But if you go ahead and check that out later, feel free to take a look on the front end. And I've done the design and implementation of that design with CSS and JavaScript there. So just scrolling through here, again, the front end stuff that we're looking at, basically these are demo pages using full column sections as they would appear on a sort of homepage within OmniUpdate, within a site, within the CMS. And here's an example with a full section with the event and some subtext. All these events link, as I said, to the calendar. Here's an example in a 2-column. Okay. And again, all these links are available. You can kind of scroll through and see what's going on here. There's a slider, and this is just a different way of organizing content. Good for maybe promoting a list of articles or people or even events. Something that is going to be manually managed and not an automatic feed. In this case, can use the slider. And again, these are all responsive, so for scrolling down, scaling down the browser for mobile, you're going to see that things are changing. We go from 1 card at the smallest to 2 to 3 to 4, all the way at the largest breakpoint there. So if I open this back up, we're back at desktop. Okay. And again, those cards do link out if needed. Newsfeed. So we have different news systems that Stony Brook is actually working on consolidating at the moment. There's a Happenings database, which is WordPress. There's a Stony Brook newsroom, which outputs RSS. And so having various data sources, we want a way that users can quickly and easily pull these in. Super straightforward here, right? We're just pulling in the title in this case, not even the image and those things. I've done a custom pull on, I think, our alumni site, stonybrook.edu/alumni, for a more visual list of those news items. So that list would have the promo image along with the title and a link to the article there. RSS here, I'm pulling that data out, again using PHP to parse through that RSS feed, and then use some of the user-generated options in the system. Let's say the user said, I want 5 articles to be pulled in by default for the listing. They choose 5 in OmniUpdate. That 5 is passed as a variable to my PHP script, which then grabs the latest 5 articles from that RSS feed and then pulls them in here. You can also notice quickly there, I hovered over, there's some share functionality. I've also built that in, that front end piece of it where we're using the social share APIs to push out to some of those share links. Okay, classic YouTube embed, nothing fancy here other than it is full screen, and I'm making sure that all the options that we want are here so that, in this case it's a full width, you're not going to have problems scaling down for mobile. I'm sure we've all seen as developers, designers, web people, those classic, just straight iframe embeds that they forget to pull the border off, and the region is actually 150 pixels in height because the iframe height wasn't defined, or the iframe height is super high because again, it wasn't implemented correctly. So this is done in a way where it's using that responsive CSS, max width 100%. It has, I'm using a 16:9 ratio for 56.25% padding top. If you've ever heard of that trick to kind of get 16:9 responsive video to work fluidly across any screen size, pretty consistent, very consistently, and pretty, uh, pretty streamlined. Not a lot of CSS to make that happen. So you can dig around there if you're interested in those details. Okay, this is a responsive data table. This uses TableSaw, responsive table plugin put out by the Filament Group. Great guys over there from what I see. Not that I've met them personally, but they have a great site. They have a great GitHub account. And so what this does is, as I scroll down, scale down our browser size, you're going to see that the data kind of flips, right? This goes off the concept of, our horizontal tables don't work very well on mobile when you have multiple columns. Instead of columns, let's make it 2-column and put the label on the left instead of on the top, and the data on the right instead of on the bottom or in a row. So each row becomes a list of rows, with the label and then the data. Fantastic way to handle responsive data tables. Essentially all this does in the system is it adds a class, and then I respond to that class using this library, using jQuery, to transform that table that is a default table entered in the CMS to a responsive table. Okay, some other standard things. Here's an accordion. All right, these are kind of just like, if you've ever heard of Brad Frost and molecular design, I mean, this is kind of digging down to those molecules that make up the greater organism of the site. Hopefully I'm giving you a picture of my mindset on design and functionality from a perspective of consistency, of cleanliness, of branding. To clarify, I'm in charge of all of the front-end code here. I'm in charge of managing and developing all of the front-end visuals, the functionality, the front-end stuff, the JavaScript, the CSS, HTML, and the back-end stuff as well to actually generate that data. So the PHP that we talked about for some of the calendar listings, and some of the greater examples. There's a magazine project that we did that I used WordPress as the back-end to actually manage that data in a whole entire custom front-end using JSON to query that data, pull that out into the magazine front-end at stonybrook.edu/magazine. I'll do another little video recap on that as well. So there's something as well, just finishing up here, the last two little examples for front end. There's a people snippet that I've developed. This gives people, no pun intended, people snippet people, sorry. This gives folks who manage their content in the CMS a way of having these kind of buckets, these categories for showing different types of content. My computer is a little slow because this screen recording program as well. Finishing up strong here, finishing up strong. So this will show us each bucket, right? You click one of these tabbed accordions and it's dropping down and it's showing us the people within that category. I'm a big believer in hiding different levels of content that don't need to be there at first. For example, if all these people were shown all at once with just headers on the department, you'd have this header and then subheaders, university, and whatever else is beneath here. I think there might be multiple divisions within this division. So, yes, medicine, right? So you have university, you have medicine. So if you had all these people listed on the page, you could have separate pages, sure, that's fine. Or why not pull it all together, give them a custom URL so that when they hit this URL, it's not only going to bring us to the people page, but it's going to open that development tab by default. Okay? And so I'm always thinking about, how do we make this from a perspective that works from the back end to the front end and everywhere in between. And then, if the advancement department wants to link, because they sure will, to the foundation tab, what I meant by sure will is you got to plan for these things, you got to think about the user, you got to think about what their needs are, what their wants are, but go a step further and say what are their potential needs? What might they ask for in the future that they're going to come back and ask for, that I have to open up this project and do it, get back into the frame of mind of what this implementation looks like, what the technology stack is, and make an update to that, you know, if I have the resources, if I can, you know, if it makes sense from a time and budget standpoint, what all those factors, you know, why don't I get in there now and do it now, you know, anticipate their needs. So in that case, you know, we build a link that they can link to that'll open that tab automatically. This is all responsive. If you close down the browser size, it goes vertical and optimized for mobile. Okay. The last piece of it here is the last snippet here, this little alpha index that I created. I've noticed several areas on our CMS sites, right? We deal with a lot of lists and a lot of content at, you know, at the university and different sites. So this is a way that people can, you know, really quickly, really easily have this alpha list sort of concept where you have a bucket or you have a list of alphabetized items. Here's a really, really simple example of just some words. When you click on one of these letters, it scrolls you down to that section on the page. Again, you know, these are kind of hashtags here. And so you can link directly to a section if you need based on the anchor, or you can use that dynamic functionality here. And this is based on the concept that you have a really long list. And again, this is another option to say, does this make sense? You know, instead of using something else, or does, let's say, the people tab snippet, the tabbed accordion that we just looked at, does that make sense to hide content and make it a step-through process that we're not showing everything at once? So with that, thank you for hanging with me, for paying attention to some of the stuff that I have to show you today. Hope I give you a good feel for the front end and some of my thought process behind designing and developing for the visual web in our modern day and age. And thank you again for watching. Feel free to check out some of my other tutorials or portfolio videos and some of my other projects that I've done. Hope to talk to you soon. Take care.